What's that?
It's a,
Hey all, implicitly embarrassing here. I've been trying to write this Wonder Woman f***ing video for 2 years now, because I kept failing to decide what is it about. Themes of the films, I guess I could, but after 1984 all my credibility would fall even more down the toilet. An examination of where they fit within creator William Moulton Marston's work, that could be pretty cool. A review of 1984's weird writing choices, that would be cool too. So I decided to say just f*** it. I'm just gonna do all of these, even though it means the video is gonna be very, very messy and pretty terrible. So join me as I embarrass myself some more. To really understand Wonder Woman, you kind of have to understand her creator, for the reason that she was created with a very specific academic purpose in mind, and also because I don't want to throw away months of research. Just like Diana's fictional mission to inspire love in man's world, she was created to spread psychology information to 1941 America. Her creator, William Moulton Marston, was a bit of a wacky person. He famously was in a relationship with 2 ladies, is often credited as the creator of the lie detector, was a lecturer in these very specific subjects, and was also a celebrity consulting psychologist too for these outlets. As Bunn's paper wonderfully summarized, throughout his career, Marston consistently disregarded the apparent boundaries between academic and popular psychology, between science and values, and between the legitimate and the illegitimate, capable of participating in both elite and popular culture, adept at using the mass media to promote himself and his ideas, end quote. As a result, Wonder Woman as a character was created very specifically as part of Marston's media arm, and this is the bit where I tried my best to explain his supposedly radical ideas. I say supposedly because I never studied psychology properly, so this is just me. He asserted that emotion was not a stimulus itself, but a response to a stimulus. Okay, therefore he disliked neuron-based explanations of consciousness because it implied consciousness was merely a sum of nerve impulses traveling through the brain. He instead believed in the psychonic theory of consciousness, which argued consciousness existed through oppositional impulses between excitation and inhibition. As a result, he was led to believe that the principal vehicle for sexual, social, and political freedom was through the binary category of dominance submission. Here's a quote that I was gonna read, but it's so dense I probably confused more people than anything. As a result, early Wonder Woman was known for its bondage imagery, which on one hand is very weird for a kid's comic, but the point is, she's designed to present Marston's case. The only way to make the world a better place is to submit to a very nice lady. Okay, now let's get to the films. That was very dense. The first Wonder Woman film is often regarded as being very, very okay. It's a bit drab looking, but it's a very simple, good, effective story that's told with an extremely likable performance. But what lets everything down is the horrible climax, which betrays all the goodwill. Diana kills William Stryker, but it doesn't save the world. She has to realize, instead, the world is more complicated than heroes and villains. But then Professor Lupin is revealed to be Ares, and the story does a series of mental gymnastics to justify there being a blamable individual villain. Because technically, Lupin didn't control anyone to cause World War I, he just gave the tools, and humans just so happened to immediately use them for heinous acts, from poisons to harsh treaties. This is 100% not what Patty Jenkins originally planned, but the studio forced her last minute, so there's no helping how abrupt it all is. However, there's a detail that I find quite profound from this retcon, which is that Lupin also funded Dan and Steve's mission, so they themselves are indicted. They are the tools for destruction themselves. This is anchored by how the scene after Lupin sent the gang is William Stryker and Dr. Poison wiping out the German officials with gas, while throwing in a useless mask. Diana's wants and dreams as the hero is like the gas mask, an unhelpful thing that she's placed all her faith into. And as she searches for it, she's wasting valuable time before she spiritually dies. I am reading this in a very dramatic way. And that's what this film's central theme is about. Daydreams, the thoughts and fantasies we have between actions. The opening words are,
I used to want to save the world.
Want in its imaginative properties is the center to Diana's arc. As a kid, she wanted to be like a warrior, like everyone else. At bedtime, she dreamt of being a savior, like Zeus. So when Captain Kirk reveals a world in need of help, she sees herself in saving it. Her role, and an opportunity to fulfill her dreams. Subsequently, there's two arguments that pulls at Diana's journeys. Hippolyta's,
They do not deserve you.
which is the source of Diana's disappointment when not only things don't work out, but her anger when she stopped from using violence. Then there's Captain Kirk's,
It's not about deserve. It's not. Maybe we don't. But it's not about that. It's about what you believe.
a sentiment exemplified earlier when he tried to explain the importance of marriage despite his regular failures, or the compromises we see that his army bros did. Samir wanted to be an actor, now he's just a spy.
Not everyone gets to be what they want to be all the time. Me? I am an actor.
Chief helps, even though he is aiding the people who historically destroyed his.
Nowhere better to be than in a war where you don't take a side.
I have nowhere else. The last war took everything from my people. We have nothing left.
And Charlie is a sniper who's too traumatized to be a sniper. As a result, as much as Diana is disappointed by the moral complexity of the real world, it has also influenced her to hold on to love as the answer more strongly, to see compromise as something that can be noble. As she now doesn't want to save the world, she wants to heal it, with her ability to love despite how good and evil exist within everyone. This is all very nice, and it makes for a very clean story and very clean themes despite the mental gymnastics. But at the same time, that's also the film's biggest problem. This is a journey where Hippolyta and the Amazon's teachings are not solutions but the source of Diana's ignorance, of her naivety, as Grant Morrison wonderfully summarized.
You saw the Wonder Woman movie?
Yeah.
What'd you think?
I liked it. I thought she was, the actress, Gal Gadot, was really likeable.
Right.
Like, you were totally rooting for the girl. Chris Pine was great. Two of them together were great, but I'm looking at the Amazons and I'm thinking, look, so you've had 3,000 years and these women haven't developed a washing machine yet? And it's kind of, my take on the Amazons goes back to William Moulton Marston's original, which was in 3,000 years they developed philosophy, they developed flying machines, they got purple rays that can heal the dead, you know, they can do all this stuff. So I kind of like the idea that the Amazons pose a threat, or pose at least an alternative.
Right.
And I felt that in the movie when Diana takes on the generals and it's like, you shouldn't be doing this, and she stomps in.
Where I come from, generals don't hide in their offices like cowards.
That's enough.
They fight alongside their soldiers. They die with them on the battlefield.
That's enough.
But it's from a place of naivety. She doesn't get the culture. She's a fish out of water. It's not like she has a credible alternative. And I think in those early Marston stories, the Amazons were a credible feminist alternative to masculine culture, and that's what's kind of missing from the movie. They haven't developed in 3,000 years. They're still riding horses and whacking each other with leather swords. You know, and it's kind of, that wouldn't have happened, you know.
Furthermore, here's another quote from William Moulton Marston himself. This, my dear friend, is the one truly great contribution of my Wonder Woman strip to moral education of the young. The only hope for peace is to teach people who are full of pep and unbound force to enjoy being bound and enjoy submission to kind authority. The film doesn't really endorse that sort of message, although in contrast, the sequel tries to be a bit more faithful by depicting these ideas through a story about denying truth through want, but with very, very, very odd final results. Wonder Woman 1984 is a very strange film because it feels like it was written on the back of a f***ing Chuck E. Cheese napkin. It's a story that does so much that it needs to constantly cheat to reach where it needs to be. Like how to explain the backstory of the MacGuffin. Literally a random man with an ancient book who's never mentioned before or after again just shows up. And I admittedly kind of love it. 1984 is an absolute guilty pleasure. It's this big, sloppy thing that's so blinded by its own commentary on modern greed that it stumbles over like someone standing on top of a paint mixer. Whatever. Artistically, Patty Jenkins wants to interrogate the message from before. The whole line of, it's not about deserve, but what you believe. The film opens with 2 prologues. The first is child Diana exploiting a shortcut, which causes her to be disqualified. And the second is her stopping a robbery. On one hand, it's pretty baffling that it takes 20 minutes for the plot to begin, but as Patty Jenkins explained, the purpose was to show it's great to dream for other things, but it's equally important to accept the truth, as I quote from the Blu-ray special features. Furthermore, the connective tissue between time periods is Maxwell Lord's infomercial, who's described by Patty Jenkins as the representation of the everyman, someone who can't stop wanting more. A quality shared with Diana, who wants Steve, and Barbara wants to be like Diana. Want, in quotation marks, is the central theme as an illusory and self-destructive force. As a result, a wish-making rock randomly arrives to grant it, and Lord for some reason becomes it, so he can have the power to set the terms for other people's wishes, alongside some unforeseen consequences, like Wonder Woman sleeping with Steve, who's in another man's body, which is pretty fucking messed up. But I guess maybe that's the point, because as Patty Jenkins described, the crux of the movie is showing the birth of villains. Diana is literally overlooking the person in front of her because she's too busy looking at someone else. Although the ethics are never brought up, so take that as you will. The second act has 2 halves, a detective mystery, then a goofy globe-tropping adventure. However, underneath both is a simple focus on 2 lovers making up for lost time. Just as Diana gave Steve a fresh pair of idealistic eyes to re-experience his own world with, Steve does the same for her. While Lord becomes a desperate leech, he ironically begins to forget his own son, the very reason why he did this. Barbara becomes a monster, and Diana loses herself. However, Steve convinces her that it's okay. Therefore, like the No Man's Land scene where her walk inspired him, this time, Steve inspires her to take those steps once again and inspire the world, where through a message of love, she convinces the world to renounce their wishes, while the Martha theme from BVS distractingly plays in the background. Lord sees the errors of his ways, and randomly finds his son, and everything is fine. This ending is where I draw the connective line between the film and Marston's work, because Diana beats Lord not through a sword, nor deflecting his lightning back into his balls, but through words and an offering of an alternative point of view, which the world submits to. Unfortunately, the final speech is really weird and unfocused. Diana talks about how the world used to be beautiful.
This world was a beautiful place, just as it was.
And then talks about everyone suffering.
Because you're not the only one who has suffered.
Therefore, there's a weird environmental message where the destruction of the world is due to the inability for people to accept the truth, that the things we think we deserve don't make us heroes. They actually turn us into villains. Which on one hand is a direct expansion of the first film's message and plays into a bunch of symbols that's planted throughout the film. But on the other hand, it's a message that is so abstract that it doesn't really quite tie everything together as well as it should. But as a climactic act, it kinda honors Wonder Woman's literary intentions, which is to show and promote an alternative point of view based on love and truth as opposed to violent urges, as Marston deeply believed psychology had a place in the public's mind as a solution for personal and social problems, a force for good that would help people to morally regulate themselves. These films, in a loving way, uphold the notion that she's ultimately a figure who loves everyone, with no exception, who'll put her hand out to a foe as opposed to shank them. But they also never truly make that a point, because it's so subtextually woven into the private realms of Diana's character arc, therefore it never gains any substantial sociological characteristics needed for it to become the main thing that everyone takes away from the films. The notion that love, in spite of the failure of one's, is a personal lesson for Diana, more than it is a useful social, political, and cultural value. However, to finish on a more positive note, I'm gonna end on a simple quote from Steinem that I quite like, that describes Marston's comics, but also ties in with the DCEU films. Here was a heroic person who might conquer with force, but only a force that was tempered by love and justice. She converted her enemies more often than not, and if they were destroyed, they did it themselves, usually in some unbloody accident. She was beautiful, brave, and explicitly out to change a world torn by hatreds and wars of men. She was Wonder Woman.
from all the madness. You stumbled till you found your pace. I know now you were better off without me. I should set this world on fire. I should tear this town apart. I'm hurting just to feel my body. I'm breaking just to be apart. I try, but I can never be for you and your beautiful life. Your beautiful life. Show me your soul. Baby, I'll show you mine. Show me your soul. Honey, it's way past time. How explicit do I have to be? Need I spell it out before you get it, baby?
So that was my Wonder Woman video, something I've been working on since the original release of 1984, and I wasn't really quite sure of how to make it, because I was only originally going to talk about themes of wands and attach it to theorists like Thorstein Veblen and John Fiske, but eventually I just realized, I kind of want to go back to William Moulton Marston's original research, and then I went into that, and I also wanted to remake my old Wonder Woman Daydream video, so the final thing was I just smushed everything together into one video and sort of stripped it down, streamlined it, so it kind of went back to the core thing about William Moulton Marston, and hopefully it was interesting, even though I'm pretty sure no one's going to watch this video. But anyways, special thanks to everyone on Patreon, and I think I've got a Spider-Man video coming soon. How original of me.